Hello and welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live, and I'm Cyril Stober. The importance of quality education in nation building cannot be overemphasized. There have been several calls on education managers on how to make the system more vibrant and qualitative for its products. The issue of mass failures has over the years generated debates and arguments among citizens, religious bodies, and non-governmental organizations who often express concern about the quality and efficiency of education in Nigeria. Tonight, the role of education managers in assuring quality in the Nigerian education system and the quest for excellence will dominate discussions. But first, let's get to see this report by our education correspondent.
I think the ratio of 1 to 10 is about 3% of the quality assurance or the standard of the education in Nigeria. There are nobody that will say the soup that the mother prepared that is no good. But it is the process of preparing that food, which is the quality. When you look at the allocation, the money that is earmarked for education, you will find out that we are not doing well. It will affect the standard.
By UNESCO's standard, 25% of every country's budget should be allocated to education. If that is done with judicious use of the fund, almost every other sector will fall in line. Education quality assurance involves processes and practices that ensure that educational standards are met, a lifelong process which commences from the early childhood period in Nigeria's formal education sector, spanning through secondary and tertiary education levels. Quality assurance plays a crucial role in maintaining the effectiveness of the education system, which is highly diversified to cover all areas of human development from early childhood, primary, tertiary, and even adult education. This implies that it is a huge capital and human investment, both for the government and private sector.
A stakeholders meeting to validate the document on the minimum standards for senior secondary education in this country. That document has been validated. After the NC has given final approval, then it will be mandatory that the minimum standards for senior secondary education in Nigeria will be implemented fully. Of course, you cannot talk about quality without having quality teachers, without having a functional curriculum, without a capacity building of teachers, even the environment. By this, we're talking about infrastructure, adequate provision of facilities. Now, all these are captured in the proposed minimum standards.
When people invest in a project, they rightfully demand for accountability for their investments. Education players in the country are interested in quality education system that will result in all-round development of the child.
Nigerian universities produce the best students. It is the people that are in primary school that go to secondary and end up in the university. And when they go out of the country, they still come out the best. You might end up spending 6 or 7 years before you finish a 4-year course. It's a disadvantage. But the day you graduate and begin to work, it is what you do after your graduation that matters, not even what you pass through in the university. Because what you are talking about is the problem of the education or the standard. It is what you become.
It is recommended, among other things, that teachers should be given regular training on the usage of various assessment tools, including ICT tools, make assessment tasks age-friendly, and also provide effective feedback to both students and parents.
Are we ready to get these things done? We have the resources, we have the human capital development, we have the fund. It's not about graduating. What is the product? What is the standard? What is the quality assurance? What do we have on ground to ensure that by the time you beat your chest and said, yes, I passed through this process, I recommend my children to go through.
Education becomes qualitative when its processes expose the students properly and efficiently to knowledge, skills and character adjustments which are applied in meeting the demands of everyday challenges.
Nigerian quality education is low because we are missing the points. First is the funding, two is the program. We are more concerned with the certificates than the individual development.
Quality education is not just education for all, but giving opportunity for all children to realize their maximum potential. In Nigeria, there are several quality assurance agencies that monitor and assure quality at different levels. And the question is, have all these bodies been able to live up to expectations?
So the education is there, but the quality, the standard of that education is no longer there. And that is why you see even graduates, for instance, cannot even be able to write formal letter. And these are people who have gone through the 4 walls of school. And then who is then to be blamed? So if the education is there and then the standard of education is not reflecting in that education that is there, at the end of the day, it is tantamount to not even having the education at all.
The public is of the view that even if government's quality assurance works in some aspects, more still need to be done in the nation's quest to catch up with.
All right, that report sets the tone for tonight's discussion. Let's introduce our guest to you tonight. We'd like to welcome to this program the Honorable Minister of Education, Professor Tahir Mamman, SAN. He joins us via Zoom tonight. Minister, thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Cyril, for having me. Thank you. Good evening.
All right. Let me also welcome to this program Mr. Sylvester Onoja, as a former principal of King's College, Lagos. It's good to have you join us.
Thank you very much.
It's been a while.
It's been a while.
Yes. Thank you.
Right. Thank you for having me.
Let me also introduce Oluwatoyin Abayomi, who's an educationist. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Good evening. Thanks for having me.
And we're also here with Ijoma Uwakwe Okoronkwo, an educational consultant, who's a member of Teachers Registration Council of Nigeria. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, as you well know, at some point in time, the program gets interactive. It means you can join in the discussion. But when we get there, we'll remind you of the process and the procedure. But for now, let's go straight into the issues at stake. And we'll start off with the Minister, naturally, and say, well, Minister, there's been so much concern about the quality of education, assurance of quality education in Nigeria. This has been of major concern to most Nigerians for quite some time now. Given the challenges in the sector, let's start off by asking how you're facing them.
Thank you very much, Cyril. I was honestly alarmed by the rating of one of your guests at the beginning, where he gave 3/10 for quality of education. And that's a very important assessment, because that's a yardstick, we can say. It's an ordinary man's view of what the situation is in the education sector. And certainly, there seems to be consensus about the quality of education in the country. The not too good quality of education in the country at all the levels, from primary right through the tertiary education. And it has to be of huge concern, because the future of a country depends largely on the quality of education it has. And because these are the people who provide the teachers, who are the scientists, who are the doctors, engineers, and everybody. So if there's a problem there, there's a serious problem facing the country. Now, when I came into office, fortunately, it's a sector that I have been in for close to over 30-something years. And although at the tertiary level, we encountered some of the problems of background of those who came into the tertiary level, and we saw that it could be better. Now, when we came in, we did a study of the situation on ground. And we set up a committee to look at what we should be doing, to provide some kind of roadmap to guide us for the duration of the term of the government. And then in his wisdom, also the president set out what is called deliverables for all the ministries. And now from our own assessment, there are really foundational problems with the education sector, right from primary school and right through up to the university, but it's much more profound at the foundation level, the primary basic education, and then progressively, because the tertiary level has done some shifting and some sifting of the products that go to them. But at the primary level, everybody goes there. In fact, it's a constitutional requirement that education at that level is compulsory and free. So everybody is expected to attend. Now, we have a situation where a very large chunk of the products at that level even struggle to read and write. Not to talk about even understand what they are going through or what they have read. And so if you have a problem at that foundation level, then it's a problem to provide solution to it at the tertiary level. So what we have done so far, having studied the system for the last 4 or 5 months, is to come up with 4-point framework that will guide the ministry to mitigate the problems and hopefully reset the entire system right from that level. And even before that, if I may say so, Cyril, we have a very beautiful law of the country, the Education Minimum Standards and Establishment of Institutions Act 1985, which very, very elaborately set out the progressive development of our education, what learners should learn at every level, from pre-primary, primary, basic education, secondary, technical, and the other levels of government, well laid out. Honestly, I will recommend everybody to go and read that act. There's a lot of wisdom in it, which encompasses the knowledge they are supposed to learn at that stage, the personal and national values that learners are supposed to acquire at that stage, and then the skills, some level of skill, even at the primary school, and even at the pre-primary levels. At that level, they're even supposed to acquire some level of skills in terms of develop some nurturing, some inquiry, and about nature, about the environment, using toys, and then, all these things. That's even at that level. Not to talk about the primary school where it's further developed. And then at the basic education level, they're supposed to acquire much more tangible skills, by which when they finish or drop out at that level, their school terminates that level, they will have acquired some skill that can even guide them through life. But we just allow the system to grow like an untended flower. This is just the way the system just came up.
Okay.
So for us, what we are doing now is to take it back. And as I said, what we are doing, I can tell you very quickly, unless you want to jump in at this stage, but I can tell you.
Yes, because Minister, it's interesting that you talk about this act that's been there since '85. And as we progress with this discussion, we would be looking into how and why this act has been there, how much of it has been put to use, and just how well the country has operated within the ambit of that act as to guarantee the kinds of products we see from our education institutions. But we'll return to you in just a moment, so you can outline those points for the 4 points you talked about. We'll come to you in a short while, but let's get the opening views of our other guests here for the time being. And Sir Sylvester Onoja, former principal of King's College, Lagos. Do you go with the general notion that over time there's been a drop in the quality of education in the country?
Well, that is obvious. But then there's a story, there's history to that. Let me first of all commend the Honorable Minister. I have seen the roadmap for education. Beautiful. I want to commend the Minister of Education presently for what they've set out to do in education. I have seen the plan of the Ministry of Education, of the Honorable Minister and his team. I think I should start by commending them. They're on the right path. But when you talk about the level of the quality of education, in the past they used to talk about the standard of education. The standard of education in Nigeria has not fallen. It is the quality. And there's a story to that. If we go back in history and when we started, the first primary school in Nigeria started in 1843 in Badagry, St. Andrew's School, the first primary school. The first secondary school started on the 5th of June in 1869, the Methodist Boys Grammar School in Lagos, and followed by other ones and others. You see, the problem with Nigerian education is that too much politics in education. Education has been hopelessly politicized. The minister talked about, in the past, there are some states that practice free education in this country. The law establishing UBEC, it talks about free and compulsory education. In some states, I can assure you that yes, there are states that practice free education. But the only thing that is free is that there are some states that the schools are free of education. There's no education taking place, unfortunately. And as we progress, we will give reasons why that is so. So there are states and there are schools that are free of education.
Okay, well, you have free education, but you have some that are free of education.
Yes.
Right. Well, I like the play on words, but let's come to Oluwatoyin Abayomi, the educationist.
Okay. I also want to commend the Honorable Minister of Education for his contribution. And I can see that even though he has just come on board, he has taken time to go back to see what has been laid down before now, referring to the 1985 Act. I want to believe we'll be able to go into that Act and see what it contains. But concerning the quality and the standard of education, our senior colleague here has said the standard has not dropped, but the quality has dropped. And I would like to say this. When we talk about education, the standard of quality, the curriculum is the key in every educational sector. So if we're talking about something that's been there since 1985, that's more than 35, going to 40 years. So apparently we want to look at how relevant the content of that act is to what is happening now. We are at an age where AI, it's trending, it's what is being used. Now we look at what our children are having in the schools. What's the relevance of the curriculum? The curriculum should be based on the needs of any society. The needs of our society today, does it align or is it met by the contents of the curriculum of our country? When we look at it vis-a-vis what the other countries in the Western world are dishing out to their learners, where do we stand? So when we say that our quality or the standard is dropping, we are looking at the fact that we are not on a vintage point when you talk about people on the other side, the Western world. Our educational system is not meant to be consumed by us alone, because when our students, our learners are taught, when they take in this content, the curriculum, they go beyond the shores of Nigeria. Yes, they are able to excel, they are able to do well when they go out. But for those that are within the country, where do they stand? One of the respondents earlier on interviewed said, graduates today are unable to express themselves or write legibly or sensibly. That has to show that the standard or the quality has a problem. But then, before we talk about the standard and the quality, the standard and the quality of education, what is the state? What's the condition of our curriculum? How relevant is it?
Okay. So, yesterday's training, yesterday's curriculum was aimed at solving yesterday's issues. Today we haven't moved on, but let's hear from Ijoma Wakui Ukuramko.
Thank you for having me, and I just want to buttress on what my other colleagues have said. And they've talked about the curriculum, they've talked about history. History is very important to talk about today. When you talk about the schools that Mr. Onoja mentioned, these were mission schools. That is where we get the bedrock of our formal education. The mission schools came, they empowered us with what was trending then. They handed over these mission schools to us and to the government. Our government took over some of these mission schools. What happened? There was a stop. So the issue I'm buttressing on is continuity. What did we do with our educational system from the mission times? We had the St. Andrews, we had CMS, we have so many good schools. But what happened then? When they left, we had a problem of management, we had a problem of continuity. What was the norm then has definitely changed. The world is going global, and children are actually learning more than they are learning in school now because of, obviously, the internet. So there's an issue with continuity. There's an issue of changing the curriculum to meet best practices around the world. Okay. So these are the issues that we need to discuss, and how do we get this curriculum revamped?
Okay, thank you so much. Well, let's return to the minister at this point in time, and again back to this Act of 85 that's been there, and like some of our guests here have drawn attention to, yes, maybe it fit the bill at the time, but what aspects of this are still applicable to today's world, as you also had the issue of the change in curriculum. So how will this be applied to today's changing times?
Well, thank you, Cyril. The first thing I want to say before going into the act is that quality education is a product of a variety of factors. One is the program and the curriculum referred to. Second factor is the teachers who deliver the curriculum and the programs. The third factor is the schools and their facilities, generally speaking. And then the fourth factor is the environment within which the learners themselves. Now, you take each of these variables to see how far we are comfortable with each one of them. I'm not going to go into that in details at this point. And you will find that there are problems on each level. Now, coming back to the Act itself, the Act does not provide a curriculum. No. It does not state what subjects to be taught. It does not tell you for how long, what should be anything should be taught. It just provides a kind of guideline for every level of education. Like the pre-primary school, for instance. The goal laid out there is to prepare the toddlers, but that's what they are, that stage, for the transition from home to school. So that's why when they are in the creche where they are, you know, the level of learning, of course, there is not lectures, it's not anything, but just to create a state of nature and allow them to explore their sort of, you know, capacity as a human being to grow at that stage. And then to prepare them also for primary school. And then begin to teach them some collaborative skills, communication skills. That's what is laid out in that act for pre-primary school. So you can see that there's no particular subject they're supposed to teach. It is the teachers who are supposed to develop what a toddler at that stage ought to learn communication skills, because they will be interacting among themselves. And then there will be toys which they can add pieces and put together under the guidance of their caregivers. They are not even lecturers, teachers at that stage. They are just caregivers, so that the parents can go to farm, they can go to work, they can engage in any activity that they are. There are the primary stage. It is now to also prepare them to begin to recognize figures, literacy actually and numeracy at that stage, because even at the earlier stage, it is for the toddlers to begin to recognize shapes, figures, colors, you know, that sort of thing. That's what they are supposed to be exposed to. But as they move into primary school, they now begin to learn things about literacy, numeracy, creative thinking, and some level of inquiry-based interaction with their teachers. And then as they progress and then prepare them for basic secondary school, where they will now begin to be exposed to knowledge, some values, personal and national values about right and wrong, and cooperation and working together, all those things. And then begin to be exposed to some skills at this stage before they go to secondary school. In that way, progressively, you know, they get exposed to science and creativity, you know, and, you know, so these are the things. So there's no curriculum there. It is the teachers now who develop the curriculum for them to make progress along that line. This is what that act, and I believe what that act sought to do is to really capture what was done in the years past, because that was the way children were brought up at that stage. And that's how it is done actually elsewhere now in other countries, in the developed countries. This is the way they are training their children at those levels. So this is what we missed out, because we were not able to capture that progressive development of our children as laid out by our visionaries at that time. And so we allowed the education system to grow so big, very rapidly, as I said, like an untended flower, you know, lacking, and then of course lacking in beauty and that sort of thing. So for us in the Ministry of Education, this is where the challenge is. It's no longer about size. Yes, we want to have access. We want to have all our children have access to school, education, and because, as the president said, education is the most powerful tool that any person can have. And so what we are doing at the moment, it's a very tall order, but we feel it is not impossible, and it is being done anywhere elsewhere. So why can't we do as a country? Is to bring us back to some of the basic things that we should be doing. And what we have done, as I said, is to approach the matter on four pillars. One, right now, if you need information on any aspect of our education sector, you'll be struggling. You will be struggling to know the number of schools in Nigeria. You may have some numbers, but it is not the whole thing. You will also be struggling, and then even those schools, you won't have any information on the condition of the schools, the proximity of their schools to each other, and then to learners, and then what facilities are in the schools. You know, there's no national information on it that you can get. Secondly, on teachers, we won't know. Nobody can tell you the number of teachers we have in Nigeria at the moment, from primary school down to the university level. We don't know their qualifications. We can't tell you, at once the qualifications of those teachers, and then the learning support they are receiving, either by the state governments or their employers, if they are in the private sector, or the federal government, if it's a federal institution. Now, there's a lot of work going on by development partners and ministries on teachers training left, right, and center. Just a shot in the dark. Then secondly, nobody can tell you how many students we have in all the schools in Nigeria. Primary school, secondary school, probably at the university level, because the ICHUA and the Universities Commission have been doing a lot of, they can easily put together that kind of information. We don't know how many girls are in school, how many boys are in school, the ratio. Now, we don't know the weaknesses across the country. You know, the weaker states where there's more weakness in terms of the quality of learning. The same thing, when we talk about girls, it's a problem in the north here. In the east, it is boys not going to school. But again, we don't have figures. It is just a guesswork. Now, right now, if you want to report to the international community like UNESCO, or report our progress on the SDG 4 programs and other international commitments, we can only provide information from the secondary sources, or from National Population Commissioner, or Bureau of Statistics, or EMIS in the Federal Ministry of Education. So we don't have this coordinated, aggregated data on the entire school system, which you can say, look, we have 1 million children, and that's why we are all struggling on how many people are out of school.
Yeah.
UNESCO will tell you a number, World Bank will give you a figure, Ministry of Education will give you a figure. So you can't plan anything. So we are just doing things in the short.
Okay.
So that's why on that front, one of the things we want to achieve is to set a baseline information for the country on this.
All right.
So we are embarking on a data and census of the entire education system in Nigeria. Okay. It's something we have prepared. We are ready to commence. We are on the basis of the private partnership policy of the federal government, which we hope by end of this year, we should be able to accomplish that part of it.
All right. Thank you.
The second...
Yes, Minister, the second, you were going to say the second aspect
yes.
of it.
Yeah, the second aspect of it is on skills. Part of what is envisaged in that act, and which is actually which some of us went through when we attended secondary school, primary and secondary schools in the 60s and early 70s, was some level of skills, which we were exposed to. That has gone. Now we want to bring this back, okay, right from primary school, so that our students, pupils can begin to be exposed to various forms of skills, so that by the time they finish school, the student would have acquired one skill or the other. I remember during my time, we attended what is then called a comprehensive secondary school, where there was a section on commercial, there was section on carpentry, that sort of thing. So on trade, generally speaking, and then there's a section on the general one. Now, we threw that away. together with the teachers, the teachers training colleges and all that.
Right.
But that is what is supposed to be achieved through the basic education, the first 3 years of education in the present system.
Okay.
Now, that is no longer the situation. As I said, we want to bring that.
Okay.
Because right now, we have millions of people out there who have they are not in employment, they are not in education, they are not in training. The only solution to it is by giving them, providing some skills at all the levels of education, so that by the time they finish, they will be able to have a meaningful livelihood.
Right,
and
Minister,
so
those are, okay. Yes, well, those are two. Those are two.
This is the second one.
Okay, the second one. So we have two more to go, but we'll ask you to just pause a while as we take a couple of reports that we have here that speak to the subject matter. This one is from Kaduna.
Education, they say, is the bedrock for the development of any society. These, however, if propelled, will produce the quality of person to drive and shape the growth of a nation. The student loan scheme introduced by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, as well as commitment to open distance learning, is to improve access to education in the country. The Kaduna State government has over the years come up with several policies and programs along with thematic areas of curriculum, content delivery, improving infrastructure and assessment with boots on ground for enforcement.
Of course, investment in education takes time to manifest. So we believe that some of these initiatives we are putting in place would even be seen better, clearer in some years to come. We've trained over 300 evaluators so far, and we hope we are going to use them in monitoring and evaluating these schools.
Simply, we realize that school infrastructures are decayed. Once there's a primary school in a particular area, access to the next junior secondary school is 10 to 15 kilometers. That's enough reason for students to drop out. Parents usually complain they don't have money to transport their children, their wards, as the case may be.
Security is one of the challenges that has posed threats to education in all levels, with primary, secondary, as well as the tertiary institutions being soft targets. These, I believe, is surmountable with government and security outfits making frantic efforts to curb the menace.
Looking at a situation where teachers will also be trained to protect the students, because they teach the students, if they can include in their curriculum some of these security studies.
The children are said to be the leaders of tomorrow. As such, much more attention needs to be given for a productive and prosperous tomorrow. In Kaduna, Haruna Muhammad.
And our next report is from Enugu.
Education remains crucial for socio-economic development, which is linked to an improved quality of life. In order to achieve excellent performance in all strata of education in the country, quality assurance plays a pivotal role in ensuring that educational institutions maintain high standards and provide students with valuable learning experiences. According to key players, the policy involves systematic review of educational provisions to maintain and improve its efficiency by ensuring that both teachers and students support quality inclusive teaching and learning.
Federal government educational system should make sure that our educational system have this guidance, parents and guidance system that will direct the kids in their vocational educational system.
Basic education in the Southeast Zone has improved significantly through quality assurance, which has assisted greatly towards the actualization of excellence, accountability, and development of schools. Since quality assurance in education is a philosophy and process of enhancing the standard of education, Enugu State is trailblazing with the establishment of 260 smart and green integrated schools, strategically located in all political wards in the state. These are not just buildings, but hubs of innovations equipped with cutting-edge facilities to ensure a holistic learning approach.
Enugu State has now passed a law that no child who is 10 years, any child who is 10 years must acquire a skill. It is a law now. The basic school is instrumental to making sure that this is not just a law, but that this is actually an effective, implemented policy.
To talk about robotic education, you can't do without all this without talking of vocational education. So that is the way to go for us to ensure that we liberate our school system from theory.
All these are efforts by the state government to meet standards of education in line with quality assurance strategies. Consensus of stakeholders in Enugu State towards quality assurance is to deliver quality education to all children of school age in the state. In Enugu, Kelechi Ochiara.
All right. Those haven't seen those two reports, and taking off from where the minister left off, you could see he's talked about developing a database, a census, getting reliable information on so many issues, number of teachers, students, the distribution, and of course, as he said, there are so many figures being bandied around when you talk of out-of-school children, and no one seems to know exactly. So he's starting from there, and then he's talked about also making sure that from that basic level, people begin to have a feel of what it takes to develop skills for them, right?
Again, I want to congratulate the minister. He has the zeal. He is committed to education. The problem of education in Nigeria, there are three problems. The first problem that education has in Nigeria is politics.
Okay. You keep saying that.
The
politics.
Second
right.
problem of education is politics.
Right.
And the third problem of education in this country is politics.
So how
now
has
the minister
politics
talked about figures and all that. You can't get the right figures because of politics. The states use the figures as a part of what is required for revenue allocation, for getting it. So they inflate figures so that you cannot have it. Because the figures they bring also has some aspects of revenue allocation that we'll talk about students' enrollment.
So, in today's terms, they pad those figures.
The figures are padded and then they are brought for allocation. Second, another one, a serious problem that education has, is that the best men, the commitment, most people who are in charge of education as lower section and all that in other areas in some states are not the best men. I know that the best man can be a thief or something. They are not even the most competent people. The problem we have is that the most acceptable people are in positions of responsibility to implement education. And that's part of the politics of education. Okay. So the right people, those who know, are not in charge. Those who do not know are teaching those who ought to know. That's part of it. It's all that politics. Commitment. Okay. The minister talked about the 1985 plan. There is the 1971 plan by Professor Adedeji. Wonderful plan. The one that brought the universal primary education. It was probably one of the best in this country. But the problem is always in the implementation. The right people are not implementing it. And the politics in education is the problem that we have. Let us take politics out of education.
All right.
And then we will deal with substance.
Okay, let's hear you, the educationist. Politics has affected everything, every aspect of developing education to that, of maintaining that quality that we all desire.
Yes. Thank you, our senior colleague. He has said that politics is a problem in Nigeria. And I agree that politics is a problem in Nigeria because the figures that are generated, he said, has allocation, that's attached to it. Now, if you look at the budgetary allocation for education in Nigeria today, this year, is less than 7%. I was going to say UNESCO recommends 15 to 20%. But the opening we had said 25. But so far, how many do we have? How much have we had in the last years? And now politics has come into it such that even this meager amount that is allocated to education is not going to what it should go for. So in a situation where you have people who shouldn't be teaching or training, like he said, training those who I mean, if you have people who shouldn't be training what do you have? And you see, there's a problem in education today that the nation seems not to have realized. We are complaining about health sector. There has been this Jackpot syndrome, taking our doctors away. But the United Kingdom has opened their doors to teachers from Nigeria. Last year, some teachers from Nigeria went over to the UK. There were 3 categories: trained with experience, experience without training, and then those who are, they are trained with experience, they can go. Those who have experience but not trained can go, and then those who are trained without experience can go. And they are doing this because they know that Nigerians are passionate when it comes to teaching. We are passionate when we are given the right environments. We bloom, we blossom in the right environment. Our teachers are taken from here and they are put in an enabling environment, and they do well. Meanwhile, back here, go to our schools and see what is happening. The teachers know what to do, but are they empowered or permitted or enabled to do what they need to do? And at the end of the day, who are the receiving end? The children, the learners. So definitely, he said, politics number 1, politics number 2, and of course number 3 is also politics. And until we purge the educational system of politics, we're not going to get it right.
All right. For Ijoma Wakwe Ukuromko,
yes,
you're a member of the Teachers Registration Council.
Yes.
Do you also struggle with the question of having a reliable database?
Schools spring up every day. And when these schools are springing up, what are the controlling measures that give them the right to open? It's from this point that you can know how many children are in every school. And how many schools are in the environment.
And how many teachers.
And how many teachers are there. Now, I know there's a lot of politics going on everywhere. It's worldwide. Politics is inevitable. It's there. But I don't think the issue we have in our educational system should just be the bedrock on politics. A serious issue about education is capacity building for teachers. The training of the teachers. The children don't have a problem because when our children go out, they blossom. When our teachers go out, they blossom because they are trained. What are we going to do to train our teachers? I think that's what we should be looking at.
Okay. So, it's another issue which we'll take to the minister. That's, you hear it said all the time that the best do not go into teaching. Those who end up in teaching are those who just need to have something to do. We'll ask the minister how that's been addressed. But let's return to the matter of the 4-point approach. He's talked about 2. So we've got 2 more. First, he talked about building a database, having a reliable census, and of course, the question of skills. So those are...
Yeah. Thank you, Cyril. Before I mention those 2, I want to assure our brother, my senior brother, if I may say so, Mr. Onoja, that we are now going to get wrong figures from the states because the data we are going to generate is not going to come from state officials. What we are going to do, we are going to deploy multiple sources, from physical headcount to deployment of technology, to ensure that every child is counted. And then every child will eventually have a number, a tracking number, through which we are going to track that child from the time he enters school, or if he's in school already, he will have that number, and that's the number he's going to use for the duration of his academic journey. And we are working together with all the other, we coordinate with all the other examination bodies, WAEC, NEPO, JAM, to ensure that that number will be prominent in the numbers that the students will use. So you will see what we have is a situation where parents by themselves will scramble to get their words registered. Otherwise, they will have no access to any aspect of our education system. So that's it. Now, the third factor is one that everybody talks about, which is the out of school. We have millions and millions of children out there who cannot be accounted for. They are out of school, girls and boys. They are not in education, they are not in employment, and they are not in training. Now, we have the mandate to get these people skills. The younger ones amongst them who can still go back to school, they will be brushed up and sent back to school. Those who are too old or uninterested in going back to formal education, they will not be equipped, and then they can, so that they can participate in the economy and have a meaningful livelihood. That is the fourth agenda. And as I said, already there's a commission set up by the federal government on it, and there are quite a number of other agencies of the Ministry of Education that share in that responsibility even before the commission itself. And so far, within the last 3 months or so, we've been able to have registered over 2 million of such young Nigerians in various programs, so that for the purpose I have just mentioned. So it is our hope that for the duration of our term, we'll be able to surpass the official figure which has been given, which is about 10.something million. And so that's the third. Then the fourth one is what has just been mentioned here, because the success of every other thing else that we mention here depends on the teachers. The teachers have to be motivated, they have to be supported, and they have to be trained and even reskilled to be able to perform the task which we have just said that will be on their laps. So we are going to focus on that. We have some schemes already on ground which have not been fully implemented. We are testing it and review it further so that the government can look at what needs to be strengthened, what needs to be retained, so that they can be in a position to implement all these programs. And then even included in part of the development of the teachers is digitization, because we are in a generation now where the digital skills are terribly important. Right now, we are training thousands and thousands of teachers on the use of digital skills in the classrooms. We have smart schools right in every state in Nigeria now, established by UBEC. And we have the Digital Resource Center here in Abuja, which is due for commissioning, and with close to about 1,000 teachers right now going through some form of teaching in digitization, so that they can bring up the method of the delivery of their programs in the classroom through the digital system. So we are bringing up a very robust policy and framework for supporting teachers, and of course, including their welfare. So these are the four activities and the pillars which will engage the ministry in the next for the duration of the term of this government. Okay.
Not the earlier 60 years been in service. How do you think this will positively impact teachers, the services of teachers?
Well, that was the plan. The plan was that it was seen as an incentive because that applies in the university system, where formerly they were retiring at 65. Now the government, in its wisdom, thought if we should extend that to teachers at the secondary school level. But believe me, Cyril, what I'm seeing in the ministry is a different thing altogether. We are seeing a situation where teachers who have gone past 65 are struggling to go back to the classroom. A lot of them, in fact, don't want to go back to the classroom. And which to me is a shock, because I thought it should be something of pride for them to, after finishing their administrative responsibilities as principals or directors, they would want to go back to the classroom. Because I remember during our time, the most senior teachers were the ones who taught us in primary school, primary 1 and 2. Because they are the ones with the best experience, with the best techniques, and how to handle the young people and all that. Now we have a situation where people who have enjoyed administrative positions don't want to go back to the classroom. And so we are looking at the policy. It's already a law, so it's very difficult to throw it away. And but we are looking at the policy, whether we should actually retain it or not.
Right. But Minister, would that not be as a result of, well, people say it's a fact, that once you are in an administrative position, then it follows that you're a lot better in so many terms, which I do not want to mention now, than the one who remains on the field as a teacher, because the administrator has access to much more. So isn't that talking about the welfare package of those who elect to remain in the classrooms? Because if you've had access to so much, you don't want to go back to where you're cut off.
Well, ordinarily, when they finish their administrative tasks, they are supposed to retire. So it's not even a benefit. So the benefit is the extra year, extra period given to them, and otherwise they would have retired. You know, but as I said, this profession is a vocation. It's not just about material benefits. It is about the passion. It is about this feeling that you are contributing to the development of a human being, of society, of your country. I thought that is actually what, for me, as somebody who's been in the teaching profession for over 40 years now, I see a lot and drive a lot of joy in seeing young girls, young boys, year in, year out, come in, you know, and go out, you know, acquiring the skills that will help them in life. For me, that is what I enjoy in my job as a teacher. You know, so it baffles me to see that there are people who don't want to go back to the classroom because there's a lot of joy in the job, honestly, I tell you. And of course, having served as a director and probably even have had access to some of the basic things that we need to continue in life, that to me, that's even an added incentive for them to say, okay, now we thank God we've been able to achieve what we need to achieve. It's now time to go back to the classroom again and look after these young ones who are the very reason why we have what we have today.
Well, Minister, we'll just stay a little while longer with you because we understand you'll be leaving us shortly. So there's so much that we want to pack in here. And one of them, of course, would be the numerous regulatory and quality standards or organizations that have been set up. Now, a number of them have been scrapped, except for maybe the senior secondary school commission. What's the thinking behind this?
Well, I didn't support that policy, this cracking. I mean, it was decision of the Federal Executive Council, and I tried to put up the argument that it was not the best thing to do, but that was a decision of the council, and the council thought it could be merged with the department which supervises basic education. But the truth of the matter is that the secondary school have been in the lodge for some time, and CUBEC is supporting education at the basic education level, that is up to JSS 3. Secondary school, and then third form has been there to support tertiary education, you know, all the universities, polytechnics, and college education. But there hasn't been particular funding regime for secondary schools except the national budget, and that had left them in the lodge, sort of. So we were even, actually, there's even an act of the National Assembly providing for 2% of funds coming of the consolidated revenue fund of the Federation for senior secondary school. So that decision came to me as a bit of a setback. That's the way I look at it. But we will make the best out of it because it's already a decision of the Federal Executive Council which we are bound to enforce. And we have to give a lot of attention now from the ministry to those institutions. And in any case, as you know, the federal government actually owns only the unity schools and the science and technical colleges. The other secondary schools are essentially owned by the states, and in some cases, even primary schools are supposed to be managed by local governments and the states. But over the years, the federal government have come to be a major supporter of facilities and provider of facilities and other services, even institutions that are owned by the states, because when the state don't do their responsibility, discharge their responsibilities well, some of them who don't, some are doing very well, then all the problem becomes a national problem, and then the federal government is put on the spot. So that's why somehow, and of course, again, under the law, the federal government has the responsibility to set standards and ensure these standards are maintained. So in trying to do that, it finds itself in having to physically support and financially support these institutions, and we are not going to shy away from it. The federal government will continue to work with the states to ensure that the level of facilities in the secondary schools are suitable and appropriate, and then the curriculum we are talking about will continue to provide it. But it's actually surprising that this is the first time we are even having curriculum and guidelines for secondary schools. We are in the process of developing one now for primary schools. We never had one before, you know. So these are some of the things that we are doing to ensure quality is brought into our school system at that level.
Okay.
And of course, at the tertiary level, so much is going on. The NUC has been up and doing. At least I was with the university until of recent when a new program was introduced by the Universities Commission. We were part of it. System core curriculum, minimum academic standards for the university to implement, and a whole range of other interventions at that level are coming in to support quality education at that level. But as I said, no matter what you do at the tertiary level, if the foundation is very poor, as we are having at the moment, then there's a problem. So that's why we are taking back all our effort and strength to strengthen the basic education and primary school education in Nigeria.
Okay, thank you very much. But so Noja, you want to come in here?
Yeah, well, I want to thank the Honorable Minister for his stand on the Secondary Education Commission, Senior Secondary Education Commission. Over the years, secondary education actually became, I want to go back to history, really. In 1956, when we started the West African School Certificate exam and all that, the secondary school, senior secondary school, has been the bedrock of education in Nigeria and the bedrock of the leadership, the quality of leadership that we have had in this country for 50 years. Those who ruled this country for 50 years, beginning from, I want to calculate, even from 1960, apart from Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, that was a university graduate who was president. No head of government was president or had been to any university. You go back, come to when General Gowon became the head of state. Of course, he's an old boy of Government College Zaria, now Bariwa College. Who took over from him? Murtala Muhammad, another Government College Zaria took over. And who took over? General Babangida took over. Government College Bida. Those who have ruled, it's only Yaradua that came into governance in Nigeria with a university degree in 2007. The basis for leadership in Nigeria is senior secondary. It cannot be ignored. And the decision that was taken, and I'm happy that the minister was on the side of the Senior Secondary Education Commission. It was first established in 1999 by General Head of State, Abubakar. And then it came back under the former President Buhari. We should keep the Senior Secondary Education Commission is the bedrock. There are 34,995 senior secondary schools in Nigeria. Out of this number, 13,526 are public schools. And the private schools, 20,777. Total of 34,995. A lot of Nigerians will end their education at that level. Education has three legs: the primary, secondary, and tertiary. I don't know what argument was made. It was in 1955 when Awolowo started free education in Western Nigeria.
All right.
The modern schools came. Modern schools came, and in Northern Nigeria was the middle school and all that was there. The key thing is the secondary education. It cannot be an orphan, because the minimum qualification for you to be elected into any position of responsibility in Nigeria is secondary education. We cannot allow that path to be as an orphan.
Okay.
So I want to plead with the Honorable Minister to go back, because those who took this decision probably do not have that grounding in education to know.
Okay.
Education has three legs. I want to add that the tertiary level of education has three legs.
Okay.
There is the NUC, there's NCC, and there is NBT.
Okay. Well, let's quickly return to the minister. Minister, I hope you're there and you're just about leaving. But just before you leave us on this program, let me just quickly ask this. You talked about teaching being a vocation. People are committed to it. As you avail us of your final thoughts before you leave, how do you factor this into it? A number of Nigerians have said it, that the first-class graduates, they go somewhere else. The second class, they are probably absorbed by industry. But those who manage the pass with little or no background fall back as teachers, because that's just something to do. So where then lies this commitment that you speak about, someone who has seen this as a vocation? Please, as you avail us of your final thoughts before you leave us, would you like to comment on that as well?
Yes, for us in the Federal Ministry of Education, that's really a very, very serious problem, because The federal government doesn't employ teachers. It is the states that employ them. Now, what we find in most states is that those who are recruited to go into the teaching profession at the primary and even to some extent the secondary school education are people who really don't have anything, who don't have any job. And so the state government will embark on a massive recruitment, 1,000, 2,000 people, and simply send them to the classroom. And these are people who don't have training in the as teachers, in the teaching profession. And then there is no clear pathway, no clearly established mechanism for supporting them to acquire the basic skills for teaching. And so that's the problem. And then when they are there, you find in a lot of states too, even to get their salaries paid, it's a problem. So you find that some of them, or a lot of them, will be going to classes only when it is convenient for them. Some will just go to the farm, maybe turn up in their classroom once in a while. So that's a very big problem. And that's why we want to have a profile of what is going on, because by the time we put in place what we want to put in, we'll be able to monitor even the performance and the movement of teachers. The facility, the system will be designed in such a way that governors at their level, in the Ministry of Federal Education, we can, and then at the local government, states, local government chairman or education secretary, be able to monitor, the performance of their teachers. If they are not in the classroom, they will know. And then, more importantly, we'll be able to know the needs, the teaching support that we need, what we need to bring in to support the teachers' development. Because you'll be able to know probably this year or next year or for the last 3 years, the teacher has not gone on any training whatsoever. So these are the kind of interventions that we will be able to do once we have that statistics and that profile. So we are determined, as I said, this present government and this set of leadership in the ministry are determined to go to the grassroots of the problem, and as I usually like to use the word plunge, we'll plunge into it. And I believe we are going to do that with the governors themselves, because they are very supportive. Right now, all the governors that we have spoken with so far, and we are engaging the AGF, they are very supportive. And there's one program we are running with development partners that have shown that these things that we are talking about are possible. The skilling, the teacher support, even those who want to work in the rural areas with the proper incentive, they rush there. Okay. So it's a question of having the right policy, and we believe we'll have the right policy, and we'll have the passion, and we'll have a president who is really very committed to education. And of course, sometimes we look at only the budget coming to education through the national budget, but we also try to remember that there are these agencies of government that have some funds which are supporting the system. The UBEC, although it has its own problems of access by the governors, some of the governors not paying providing their matching grants, counterpart funding in order to access the funds. But all these, we are addressing them. And so there are a whole range of resources coming in. It's a question of ensuring that it is coordinated, there's no waste, no duplication, and they will maximize all the resources that are available.
Well, we wish you could stay longer with us, but we must thank you at this point. Minister of Education, Professor Tahir Mamman, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, teacher and lawyer. Thank you very much for being on.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Right.
Good night.
All right. At this point, we'll take a short break. When we return, the program continues, and we'll still look at the quality of education, and we'll open the phone lines and you can join in the conversation. So stay with us on NTA Tuesday Live. We'll be back shortly.
Oriented Innovation Talk Show.
Thanks for staying with us, and the program continues, and of course, as you would have expected, the discussion continued behind the scenes. That's how serious the matter is. But at this point in time, the phone lines will be open. The numbers to call will be on your screen. We advise you to take advantage of those and call in and raise your questions or comments on the issues at stake. So we also remind you every Tuesday that if you call in and your call gets through to the studio, do us a favor, turn down the volume of your TV set. That's the way to avoid the hurlback or the echo. And we just advise that you keep the questions and comments as short as possible, straight to the point, and not to bother too much about the greetings. Just a simple hello would do. So we start up this segment with another of our reports. This one is from Damaturu.
I'm glad and I'm proud to say that Yobe Education Trust Fund has provided some necessary things to my school, because when the school was open, we are lacking source of water like the borehole. We have one of the boreholes is unfunctional, but as of now, this Education Trust Fund has provided a functional borehole, which now the students are using it.
Yeah, a lot of intervention have done by Yet Fund, I mean the Yobe Education Trust Fund. They started with drilling a borehole. I think it is about 86 feet, or the depth, I mean.
We are very grateful, we are very happy. They built about 8 toilets for the school and also a borehole. So, and even the community are benefiting from the borehole.
These testimonies by heads of public schools and parents of students explained the cardinal objective of setting up of Yobe State Education Trust Fund, which is to basically provide the needed interventions in schools across the state. So far, the fund has intervened in 21 public schools where it has constructed toilet facilities, drilled solar-powered boreholes, procured and distributed furniture, as well as renovated one of the model schools in Damaturu blown up by windstorm.
We want Yet Fund to put more effort on training and retraining of teachers. Whenever we have teachers here, if there is no training, then it will serve as another challenge.
The fund is essentially just promoting and augmenting and catalyzing action and making sure that best practices are implemented in the education sector. Otherwise, and it is not the only solution. It's not, the fund is not what you call a fix-it-all magic wand. It is not, far from it. But working with the state government and the treasury resources, we should be able to get optimum result. The future is bright for education.
One unique strategy adopted by Yet Fund is the engagement of 3 academic institutions in the state for mass production of chairs and desks for both students and teachers as a way of encouraging local production of intervention materials.
The Yet Fund project, it is a wonderful project. The way they came, they organized, they want only the 3 zones to benefit. Like here, we are hosting the Zone A, that's Federal Polytechnic Damaturu. The previous work was done in the FC Potiskum. So when they came, they saw we have everything, the facilities and everything. All what they want from outside, we have it here. And we have shown the dedication. For the first time, they fabricated here. And we show them that we can be able to handle more than even this work.
To parents and guardians, the Yobe Educational Trust Fund wish to appeal that they should maintain their confidence on education, for education is central to human development. They should do all they can to educate their children, their wards, and themselves, because in reality there is no end to learning.
The fund, however, restated commitment to continue to provide intervention projects in public schools for the development of education in the state. In Damaturu, Yunusa Suleiman,
about the 65 years.
Right. From Damaturu, we go on to Asaba.
Country education subsector is critical to the development of sound education in the state. It is the foundation on which subsequent educational blocks are laid. It is therefore important that this stage of the education system is solid. The Delta State vision on education is to provide unfettered access to education to all children of basic, primary and post-primary schools age for a qualitative, functional and free education that will equip them for purposeful living.
In this policy on education, government encourages the learners to be off street by providing free education. You can see some textbooks before you, and that is part of government duty. Every term, every session, they provide free textbooks, free laboratory equipment, making sure that students, pupils learn. That was how government introduced resumption tests, resumption monitoring.
A child getting to understand that a whole number is 1. And you can minus fraction from a whole number. You don't just abstractly tell that child that a whole number, well, for example, 1 minus 7 over 11. The child will have a problem. But Delta State emphasizes on instructional materials. For example, you could use a sheet of paper, that is 1, cut it into 11 places, let them know that the numerator is the 7 in the fraction and the denominator is the 11. And you can remove 7 over 11 from 1. By the time you do that shading and the children are doing it, it's part of instructional materials. They see it, it is a concept, they are going to have it imbibed in their memory, and behold, the emphasis that the government has done will make that child never to forget that 1 minus 7 over 11 is 4 over 11.
For most Deltans, the government has done well in meeting specific areas of needs in schools, especially on infrastructural and capacity building development.
Children want to learn where their brain will cool down. When they are jam-packed in a class, it's a problem. Delta State saw all of that and decided to build more classrooms.
Government cannot read for you. We will only advise you. There are librarians in schools. There are teachers in schools. There are principals in schools. Then we also go around. Read. Knowledge is power.
Scholarships and bursary awards have been provided for students at tertiary institutions to encourage them to excel in their studies and also lessen the burden of parents in payment of school fees.
Delta State has always followed one bursary scheme that was established in, I think, 2004. And that scheme qualifies Deltans particularly, who have done very well, particularly with those with high IQ, intelligence quotient, I mean. And they must not be dull, because it inspires them to do well. For that reason, Delta State has earmarked that 2.2 should be at least your minimum for you to qualify.
Delta State Universal Basic Education Board is always on ground to checkmate and revamp the standard of primary school education in the state. Also, the concept of vocational and technical education in the state has changed in scope and structure since its inception, as its components have been strengthened in competence. In Asaba, Becky Greatsman Chukuka.
All right, we're back here in the studio, and with all the issues that have been raised, so let's return to our guest here who's still with us, and former principal of King's College, Mr. Sylvester Onoja. Again, you heard from the last 2 reports and the closing comments of the minister before he took leave of the program.
Well, you see, I have not changed my mind that the problem of Nigerian education is politics. Okay. There's too much politics in education. Those who do not know are put in charge of those who ought to know. The best men are left out, and the most accepted men are in positions of responsibility. Look at the decision that was taken about the Senior Secondary Education Commission, for God's sake. Tertiary institutions, tertiary level of education has 3 regulatory bodies. the NUC, the NBT, and the NCC. And then at the lower level, where character is formed, your degree certificate is given to you as a result of character and learning. That character is developed at the level of senior secondary education and primary education. That's one arm of education. It is irreplaceable. Character. Character. You take it. Now, I gave you an example of how this country, for 50 years, was under those who didn't go beyond secondary school or teachers grade 2 certificates. Well, the minister has beautiful ideas about what he wants to do, but there's nothing new about it. In 1955, like I said, when Awolowo started a free education in Western Nigeria, the modern schools came. In Northern Nigeria, before the self-government and all that, they started the craft schools. The craft schools were there for those who cannot do what the minister has said. The craft schools were doing it. And the modern schools were there for those who don't have the capacity for the grammar school. So there is actually nothing new. These policies are already there. And then he spoke about those who are in the Ministry of Education, those who are directors and no longer want to teach. Right. You see, education, teachers, since the history of the Ministry of Education started, directors of administration or people who are in charge of what do you call them now, resource materials. They come from the Office of Head of Service. Okay. The title director is alien to the teaching profession. Exactly. All right? All teachers in the Ministry of Education were employed as Education Officer 8. And you are on level 8. So you get promoted from Education Officer 8 to Education Officer 7 to Education Officer 6 to Education Officer 5 to Education Officer 4 and then to Education Officer 1 on grade level 17. Unfortunately, when anybody who attains the position of a director of level 17 in the Ministry of Education, because of this alien thing that was brought from the head of service, they said you are now a director. Okay. And everybody became a director and director principal. It can be corrected. It can be corrected. So, and then again,
we have our first caller on the line. It's one of our usual regulars, Ada calling in from Jos. Hello to you now. Hello, are you still there?
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, calling from the Plateau State.
Yes, there's a big hurlback.
There is a direct correlation between education and development. This explains why it's difficult for a nation to rise above its human capital. Right. Therefore, there is a need for qualitative education. The following quotations come to mind. Professor Morgan, no nation can rise above the level of its teachers. Nelson Mandela, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. All these quotes buttress the importance of education. It's unfortunate that education has not been given its pride of place in Nigeria. The most worrisome aspect is the school feeding program, which is only carried out in some selected public primary schools. It should be all-inclusive. There's nothing wrong with the introduction of the school feeding program, but there's something wrong with the feeding of pupils in an environment that is not conducive for learning. To make matters worse, effective learning is non-existent in most of these schools where this feeding program is going on. I feel qualitative teaching and learning should be done simultaneously with the feeding program for it to achieve the desired impact of education. FD should revisit the students' teacher load. The way they have it now, it will not work. I'm sad that the minister has left. Let them revisit it, otherwise that loan scheme will not work in Nigeria. There's so much corruption in Nigeria. Then again, politics, corruption is, these are the two major problems with Nigerian education system. It's not just the poor budgetary allocation, because even the little that is budgeted, sometimes it goes into private pockets. The corruption issue, Cyril, are you aware that in recent times, sometime this year, it was discovered that a state in Nigeria had ghost schools So before we talk about ghost workers, I was shocked the day they made the revelation was discovered. We have ghost schools. So how are you going to get the data you're talking about? It's going to be very difficult. It's going to be hard work to get reliable data in Nigeria. And that is because we have a faulty structure. If we practice fiscal federalism, otherwise known as restructuring, all these things will not happen because each state will now develop at its own pace. But allocations will not be based on what is your population of students or pupils in your state. So that will not make people to want to inflate the figures. That is the problem. Let us address the basics. And then let us go away from this notion of that you must acquire up to university, the tertiary education before you can become a somebody or you will be able to survive. It's because we don't have qualitative education. If we have it in most advanced countries, 50% of their population don't go up to the tertiary level because they have a sound basic education scheme. Right from the primary school, they have vocational skills, everything is there. By the time the child gets up to the secondary level, the person has already acquired skills to survive in life. But it's not so in Nigeria. You see somebody finishing from the university, he can't even write a correct sentence on what I do. He comes out, he's looking for a white-collar job. He cannot be self-employed. Then they will do fire brigade schemes in George NYC and say they are acquiring skills. How can you acquire skills within 3 weeks? Is it possible? Why would we deceiving ourselves? So that is the problem we have in Nigeria. Right. So all I'm trying to say here is that we have to take education seriously. Then the worrisome aspect, I'm an educationist, I'm retired though, but the most worrisome aspect is that even the cutoff mark for people who want to go and teach, it's usually the least. Why must they have the cutoff mark in JAB? Why? All this always talking about Nigeria. I demand to get better.
Thank you for calling in. Thank you. Well, yes, back here in the studio, and the question of the key issue of teachers and the quality. We talked about training and retraining, but who are the trainers? Who are training those who require retraining?
Yes, exactly. Like we've discussed over time, the core of education in Nigeria or any educational system in any country are the teachers. Now, the Honorable Minister talked about skills acquisition. Who are the people who will train this? Who will kind of teach these skills? Are they going to be people from outside or the teachers? Now, if it's the teachers that are meant to teach and get the children to acquire these skills, how ready, how equipped are the teachers? Do they have the skills? They can't give what they don't have. He mentioned that directors or those who rise to director level or who have been in position of administration do not want to go back to the classroom. So the question now is, if they have acquired so much and they don't want to go back to the system to give back, then what is happening? Education is not, or teaching rather, is not a vocation. Teaching is a profession. And until we begin to see the totality of our teachers as being important in Nigeria, things might not change. It is only in education that you find people who are not qualified, who are not trained, that come on board and want to train children. Learners, our children are important. You don't take your child, you don't take an ailing person to the hospital and give to the cleaner. So in education, we need to know that the teachers need to be trained. But the thing, like the question we've asked is, who are those coming to train? If those who have acquired knowledge, who have gone through the rung of the ladder, do not want to go back to the school system or to the classroom.
All right, back to the phones. Another of our regular callers, Umar Anache, calling in from Birnin Kebbi. Hello, Umar.
Yes. Hello. Good day. My name is Umar Anache, calling from Birnin Kebbi, I see here. I will first of all start by recommending Mr. President for having the right person in the right position. For the first time, the Ministry of Education is headed by a professor. And that professor Professor Muhammad Tahir is a person that knows what he is doing. I believe he is going to do the needful to education. You and I, Ciro, know that educational standard has fallen drastically. It's not an education of yesterday. Just like previous education is. Take an example, Shehu Shagari, late Shehu Shagari. It's a grade 2 teacher, but even an England man knows that he can speak English fluently. So that is how education is supposed to be. Therefore, in my own view, in my own opinion, thank God the minister stated that the basic is falling. He is interested in the basic. That is the foundation. I would like to advise, in my own opinion, that all primary education should be under federal government. All primary education. Their teachers, their facilities, and the schools should be under federal government. Primary education should be the basic foundation. There is no way you can build anything without foundation.
Okay.
Even if you build it on foundation that is not solid, it will fall along the line. And that is what is happening in Nigeria now. Let me stop here. May God continue to bless our country.
All right. Thank you,
Zero.
Thank you very much, Umar Anachi. Just a slight quick correction there. Ministers of education have been many professors who are ministers of education in Nigeria. It's not the first time we've had one. Just a slight correction. Well, thank you for your views as usual. Let's go to the member of the Teachers Registration Council. And yes, let's hear from you on this.
You know, it's heartbreaking when you find out that education is not given its right place in our Nigerian society. As Mrs. Abayomi said, when you go to a hospital, you won't take a patient and give to the cleaner to treat. So why will you bring an incompetent person in a state like 1,000 teachers who have never taught, who don't even understand what it is to teach, the rudiments of education, the pedagogies of education, to come and teach people's children? That is failing the whole country. It's failing the society. So I don't even understand why they want to start working on a database, because they're busy counting and our education system is going into the ground. We need to save our teachers. We need to save the children.
Right. Back to the phones. We have Olabode, who's calling in from Lagos. Hello.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Right.
One of the things I want to say is that education is an integrated one. From home training to school training, nursery, primary, secondary, tertiary. The first pillar, the home training, is already collapsed. Where parents take their children to school, help them to get results, and feed them somewhere. When that is lacking, children go to school with untrained teacher, they abuse the teacher, the parents go to school and go and abuse the teacher. Now the training of integrity, lack of corruption, cheating is already embedded. So it collapsed when when one of the speakers says politics. Politics is part of human, it's a lifestyle. You cannot destroy education. The capacity, just as the educationalists are talking, is the capacity. What are the curriculum? Nigerians traveling abroad, wonderful. But they are helping that nation to solve their own problems. Which education is helping us to solve Nigerian problems? Because if you train like that, you are going to be trained to solve American problems. When you come back to Nigeria, you come back with the American solution to Nigerian problem. The culture is deficient. The knowledge is deficient. You cannot use New York solution to solve about problems. So our education needs to be overall. And we need to domesticate what was handed back to us to move higher. For the paucity of time, I want to thank you for the opportunity.
Right. Thank you very much. Olawode. Thank you. Right. Yes, Mr. Noja. Yes.
Yeah, well, you see, a problem of education, it can be fixed.
Okay.
Education, if you are a teacher, you mentor.
Yes.
We have a reservoir of people who retired from ministries of education long time ago. Those were the core teachers. They still know it. And one of the ways of bringing back quality education is the retraining of the teachers that we have. And those who have served before are in a good position to give this training. I know what it was in the Federal Ministry of Education, the quality of teachers we had. And we still have them. There are directors who have retired from the Federal Ministry of Education over the years. If you really want education to move forward, you have to ask that group of people to come and mentor those who are there now. Like I said, politics has done so much damage. Those who are not supposed to be in position A were given because of who they know. And I know that even in the Federal Ministry of Education, because that's where I know, sometimes if you have to become a principal of, you have to know somebody outside the ministry to help you to become a principal. But the major thing there is the inspectorate service, as we used to call it, is now FECAS, is collapsed. There are no inspectors at the level of states, even at the federal government. There are no, we don't feel the presence of those who are supposed, the quality controllers. They are not there. They are completely absent at the level of the states. And at another level of states, in the states, teachers are the last people to be paid. There are states where teachers earn percentage salaries. They are paid a percentage of their salary. And that is the aspect of politics that I keep on. The teachers are treated at second rate. And they are the drivers of tomorrow. The only key to development in Nigeria is education. If we do not get education right, we cannot get anything. We will not be able to get anything right. And what is happening, the bandits and all that, and all the kidnappings and all that, you know that. So the lack of education.
Now, if we go forward, are we paying the much needed attention to the provision of infrastructure? If you go to so many schools, it's been agreed here, the minister himself said so, that the foundation, the basic education is where the challenge begins. And do we see adequate infrastructure at that level of education? With what we see, pictures sometimes you see of schools in certain areas, you wonder if any reasonable or qualitative teaching and learning can take place in those.
Okay, let me come in there, Cyril. I want to go back to what the Honorable Minister said about the early years. If you look at education, you see that children, okay, let me say this, that there are 4 stages of learning as children grow cognitively, as Jean Piaget said. The sensory motor stage, the pre-operational stage, the concrete operational stage, and then the formal operational stage. Now, he did mention, talking about the sensory motor stage, that the teachers are the ones who decide what they do, making the environment conducive for learning. Because at this stage, what the learners at this stage, between 0 to 2, or let's say even moving to the pre-operational stage of 7, they use more of their sensories. So when we're looking at the conduciveness of the environment. We want to tie it to what obtains
globally.
Yes, globally. We realize that we are not there. In a situation where children who ought to be learning using their senses do not have safe environments, do not have the necessary, now one, they don't have safe environments. The structure is not there. How can they have these resources? How can they have these materials that should stimulate them to learn? We don't have it. What he has said probably is what we can pick from popular and conspicuous schools and states. If you go to the interiors, your heart will bleed at what you will see. We still have our learners learning under trees. We still have them in shanties. It will soon start raining. You will see pictures of our students learning in places, in shanties that are dripping, some flooded. So when it comes to making the environment conducive, we actually do not have that. And I want to believe that we have intentionally not mentioned private schools. The private schools ought to have come in as complements to supplement what the government of the day is providing. But somehow, because of the gap, because of what is happening in the system, the private school seems to be holding sway. And so when you talk about seeing a world-class environment as you have in the Western world, you find that only in the private sector. But one thing I know is, coming back to education, we need to do something. It is a state of emergency. I've been privileged to teach in early years, that is nursery, primary, secondary, and I'm now at the tertiary level. Everything from the foundational stage cascade to the tertiary. Don't be surprised to go to the universities today and you find our students, undergraduates, who will make you to marvel that is this really a university or secondary school? And so it comes down to the fact that the secondary school level needs to be attended to seriously, because the secondary education should be able to equip a student to be functional and self-reliant, such that even if he doesn't want to continue after secondary school, he should be able to live functionally in the society or wherever he chooses to, based on the skills he has kind of acquired and the competencies as well.
Yes. Still on the subject of providing the right environment, you find that, yes, the minister said the federal government has had to come in and support and assist the states. And you tend to ask yourself, what's happening in the states? We see a lot of these challenges at the state and local government levels, and some would even say to you that there's no system, or like Mr. Odo just said, the schools are free of education.
The states are free of education.
You know that when you go into the interiors, you find that there's no structure. It is as you please. That is the way it is. But I want to urge the private sector. They need to partner with the public schools. Yeah. It's a necessity, because there's an emergency going on here right now. So if they can give back through either infrastructure or through resources, through training, it will bring a little bit of sukkah to what we're trying to do. But it's a long haul to get this thing working.
In all of this, where is the place of affordability? Can Nigerians afford qualitative education where it's provided?
The third problem we have is funding. Funding is a serious issue. Why are we having the lowest amount given to us in education, when education is actually the bedrock? So policies that have been implemented, promises that have been made through these policies should be implemented. They should carry it out. We can't be getting less than 7%. Isn't it 7%?
Less than 7%.
Less than 7% from the budget.
6 points.
It is so low. What can we do with that? How many schools can we build with that? Children are being born every day.
Exactly.
So schools need to be there. And then we're not even equipping these schools to provide for these children so that even if they finish secondary school, they are standing on their own. There's no money. The funding is an issue.
The states take after the federal government in this, right? The allocations to education.
That's right. There is money for education. Sorry. That money that we used to send people to the Holy Lands on pilgrimages, to Mecca and to Jerusalem, that is money for education, where we acquire salvation for people. 2, that money for the new government house, that is money for education. That money for the numerous flyovers that has become the fashion in this country, that is money for education. That money for building the new airport to where nobody goes, that is money for education. It's a question of priority. We haven't gotten our priority right. And the only way we can make progress in this country is that we must have 3 priorities. Our priority number 1 should be education. Our priority number 2 should be education. And our priority number 3 should be education. Until we have those priorities, then we're heading for nowhere.
Well, my friend,
and again,
time has caught up with us.
Time has caught up with us. Please do not leave the senior secondary sector of education as an orphan. That is where character is formed. Please, don't leave senior secondary education as an orphan, because 90% of Nigerians, there are 5,271,522 senior secondary students in this country.
That's the database.
Out of this number,
that's the database.
That is not available.
Out of this number, only about 1.4 million or less than that gain admission to universities. So we have about 4 million
that are out of, they are going nowhere.
Right, it's
those
time
ones,
to say a big thank you to our guests. We wish we could continue, but as I always say, no one program can take care of all the issues at stake. And so we must leave this conversation here and thank our guests for being here. The member of the Teachers Registration Council of Nigeria and educational consultant, Ijoma Wakwe Okoronkwo, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Right. Big thanks also to the educationist, Oluwatoyin Abayomi.
Thank you very much.
A pleasure having you.
Thank you.
And, the former principal of King's College, Lagos, he's always been here with us for quite some time, except quite recently that we haven't seen much of him. Mr. Sylvester Onoja, we thank you so very much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, sir.
Right. And thank you, too, for being part of this program. For those who called in, thank you for joining in the conversation. Next week, we'll be back with NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stover. Bye for now.